You use Microsoft every day, even if you never see a single logo. It is the silent architecture of the modern economy, powering the servers of global banks, the logistics of retail giants, and the administrative backbone of government agencies. While more colorful companies capture the headlines with viral hardware or social trends, Microsoft has focused on a deeper form of power, becoming the oxygen that businesses breathe. It is a dominance built not on novelty, but on a pervasive, quiet necessity. To understand how they achieved this absolute enclosure, we have to look back at their transition from a simple software provider to a universal platform. The journey began not with a product, but with a philosophy of platform control. In the early days of computing, Bill Gates and Paul Allen realized that the most valuable part of a computer wasn't the box, but the operating system that told the box what to do. By licensing MS-DOS and later Windows to every hardware manufacturer, Microsoft ensured that not the computer makers owned the relationship with the user. This strategic foresight allowed them to commoditize hardware, while keeping the high-margin software for themselves. As the personal computer moved from a hobbyist desk to the office cubicle, Microsoft's reach expanded from simple tools to the foundational layer of the professional world. As the foundation was laid, the company moved toward a strategy of total enterprise dependence. This period saw the birth of the lock-in. By bundling the operating system with the Office suite, Microsoft created a standard that no business could ignore. If your clients used Excel and your partners used Word, you were forced to use them too. This wasn't just about software. It was about the creation of a universal language for business. Once a workforce was trained on Microsoft's interface, the cost of retraining them on a competitor's system became a barrier to entry that few companies were willing to pay. This lock-in was further reinforced by Windows Server and Active Directory. By controlling how employees logged into their computers and how printers shared data, Microsoft became the gatekeeper of the Office network. For an IT department, staying with Microsoft was the path of least resistance. It was a self-reinforcing cycle. The more products a company used, the more integrated their system became, and the more difficult it was to ever leave. However, even empires must evolve, and the rise of the internet forced Microsoft to undergo its most significant pivot. Under the leadership of Satya Nadella, the company moved away from its Windows-only obsession and embraced the cloud. This was the birth of Azure. Microsoft realized that the future of business wasn't on a local hard drive, but in a distributed data center. They leveraged their existing relationships with thousands of corporations to transition them into the cloud. If you already used Windows and Office, moving your servers to Azure was a natural extension. This transition transformed the company's business model from one-time sales to a subscription-based engine. This SaaS model, software as a service, meant that instead of buying a disk once every 5 years, businesses now paid Microsoft a recurring monthly fee. The shift provided the company with a level of financial stability and predictability that is almost unparalleled in the history of capitalism. By moving Office to the cloud through Microsoft 365, they ensured that they were no longer selling a product, but renting out the workspace itself. The money flowing through this system is a masterpiece of recurring revenue and massive margins, because the marginal cost of providing digital software to an additional user is almost zero. Microsoft enjoys profit margins that physical manufacturers could never imagine. Their revenue streams are diversified across cloud computing, professional networking through LinkedIn, and enterprise software. This means that even if one sector faces a downturn, the other pillars of the empire remain standing. In 2025 and 2026, Microsoft's valuation continued to soar because it had successfully positioned itself as the landlord of the digital world. This leads us to the question of why this dominance is so durable. The answer lies in the extreme switching cost associated with the Microsoft ecosystem. For a modern corporation to move away from Microsoft, they would have to migrate decades of data, retrain thousands of staff, and rebuild their entire IT security protocol from scratch. It is a logistical nightmare that poses an existential risk to the business. Therefore, even when better individual tools appear on the market, corporations stay with Microsoft because it is the safer choice. As the saying goes, nobody ever got fired for buying Microsoft. Furthermore, Microsoft has mastered the art of aggressive integration. When a new trend emerges, such as team collaboration or artificial intelligence, Microsoft simply builds or acquires a version of that tool and integrates it into their existing bundle. This is how Teams successfully blended the growth of Slack, and how the integration of OpenAI's technology into Bing and Office has allowed Microsoft to lead the AI conversation. They don't need to be the first to innovate. They just need to be the ones who provide the innovation within the system that businesses already use. As we look at the current landscape, the risk of fragmentation or disruption remains low because of this deep infrastructure moat. While Apple owns the consumer's pocket and Google owns the consumer's curiosity, Microsoft owns the professional's time. Their control is not flashy, and it rarely makes for viral social media content, but it is the most stable form of power in the world. They have built a system where the world's most important work is done on their terms, using their tools and paying their fees. Ultimately, the lesson of Microsoft's takeover is that boring wins in the long term. By focusing on the unglamorous needs of the enterprise, security, reliability, and compatibility, they built an empire that is largely immune to the whims of fashion. They don't need to be your favorite brand. They just need to be the one you can't work without. In the architecture of the global economy, Microsoft is the foundation. And as long as businesses need to communicate, calculate, and coordinate, that foundation is not going anywhere.